Добрый день, дорогие радиослушатели, а также наши телезрители. Сегодня вы смотрите программу «Права и обязанности», ее ведущая программы Светлана Павленко. А у нас в студии есть гость, который приехал к нам с Туалатина. Его зовут Боб Тамиони, Mortgage Freedom and Financial Services. И сегодня мы поговорим вообще о том, что же такое деньги и как нам нужно их инвестировать. Поговорим также о программе 401k, которую мы получаем как наше пенсионное вознаграждение после как мы заканчиваем нашу работу. Итак, я хочу вам представить нашего гостя. Но помните, что наша программа будет абсолютно на английском языке, поэтому подключайтесь к нам, если вы интересуетесь, как нужно правильно инвестировать. Hi, Bob. Really appreciate that you're here today.
Thank you. Thank you.
And
I agree with every word you said.
That's wonderful.
Because I heard 401k in there, so I know I can take that out.
Exactly. Yes, you heard that right.
I'm a full-blood Italian, and my folks never taught me Italian. I wish, because having two languages is so powerful. I just wish I did. We adopted a little girl from Bulgaria, so she has Bulgarian and English, and it's so helpful to have two languages. I wish I did, but you know. I can understand a little bit Italian.
Now you're going to learn a little bit Russian too, because you got involved with us.
And I understand a little bit of Italian because I took Spanish in school, so it's kind of similar a little bit, you know. So, but it's really, it's been a privilege, and I thank you so very much for inviting me on the program. It's really, really a privilege. The Lord has just blessed us so immensely. We've had the privilege of being on the, as you mentioned, the Christian radio station, the other one, 93.9 KPDQ. We've been on there for 19 years now, twice a month, and it's just been such a privilege. It's so exciting to be able to have Christians come into our home, into our office, and help them out financially. And then we have a lot of non-Christians come in. It gives me a chance to witness to them and talk to them about the Lord. And our financial planning it's almost like a ministry. I mean, I really enjoy doing it, and God is our provider, not man, so I'm not worried about whether you have $1,000 to invest or $100,000 to invest. It all comes out the same. And but we don't charge a fee. A little bit different. Most financial planners do charge some kind of a fee to sit down and talk to them, like an attorney or a CPA, a doctor, and so on. We don't, because Lana, we know that over the years, if we recommend one of our products or services, that particular company pays us a fee or a commission, whatever you want to call it, to promote that product. Just like when you buy a loaf of bread, the truck driver has already been paid. So I'm kind of the truck driver. I'm delivering that service. And because of that, we can sit down for an hour and a half, and visit, talk a lot about the Lord and about growing in the Lord, and then also talk about the financial planning and financial services, knowing that there's no pressure. You don't have to, in fact, very seldom do we make a decision on the first interview. I do fact-finding, get all the facts, where you're at, what you want to do, what your goals are, how many years down the road. I don't have very many years down the road. You have a lot of years left, but we can help you invest in those for those years. And by doing that, they know they can then leave and take the printouts with them and a brochure and whatever else, and pray about it, talk about it, and visit about it, and find out if it's really something they really want to do. And then they come back in. In the 43 years I've been doing this, again, I mentioned I must have started when I was really young.
That's right. You started when you was 3.
Okay, 3 or 10, right? I wish. From here up, I'm 18, but from here down, I'm in deep trouble. So, but we show them, and we sit, we have them take it home, we visit, and as I was saying, we have about a 96% what's called persistency ratio. In other words, 96% of our clients are still our clients, and that's because we want to make sure they really want to do this, and it's right for them. We have a large questionnaire that asks them a lot of questions to make sure this particular services or the service that we recommend really fits their specific needs. And I'm a broker, so I can handle any company, any type of financial service. But there are a couple of companies that I really specialize in and like to use especially because I've worked with them for a long time. I do a lot of business with them, and so therefore they can oftentimes help me with, help the client out with little special services and get things done a little faster than would be normally. So it's very helpful. But again, being a broker, I can represent whatever company has that particular financial service or product.
And you will not have a problem if somebody walks in with an interpreter, like maybe they will bring their kids or somebody they know. They will be fine for them because they might understand what we're talking about right now, but if they need to look on some papers, they would like to have somebody else, and there will be no problem.
No problem. I was mentioning earlier, I have one particular client, a Romanian, and she always brings her son in and does the interpreting. Even though she can speak English, we can talk, but again, so you get some of the specific stuff and some of the real detailed stuff. Some of the words don't quite match And so he's able to interpret for it, and I'm happy with that, fine with that.
That's great. I think I will ask the question that everybody who is watching us, who is listening, they would like to ask that too. Who is need to come and see you as far as like what age category, or somebody who works versus who is not working, or a business owners, or somebody maybe who makes a lot of money or little money? Who will be that category?
I think you've pretty much answered that whole question. It doesn't matter how, like I said, whether you have $1,000 a month to invest, or $1,000 to invest, or $100,000 to invest, or $1 million, whatever it might be. And age doesn't really matter. The younger you start, the much better. I'll give you an example. My son is an example, and I'll bring up his point in a moment. But if you were 22 years old and you started saving money, and at age 30 you were to stop and just leave that money sit there and let it grow, the next person comes along and doesn't do anything until they're 30. All right? Then they start investing the same amount of money you were investing. At 65, guess what? They both have the approximate same amount of money. That first 8 years made up for the next 35 years because you got a head start. So I tell people the best time to invest, yesterday and today. Let's get together and start right away, because every time you put it off and procrastinate, which is one of the biggest problems in this country, we procrastinate. It just takes a lot longer to get that, or you have to put in a lot more. I have people, you mentioned a while ago, someone came in about 55. You're going to have to put away a lot of money at 55 to be able to retire at 65. Now, if you don't want to retire until you're 75, maybe that'll work. But as an example, my son is one of my prime examples. I have 5 children, 10 grandchildren, and a great-grandchild, and a great-grandchild. My son is now 29. He started, I think, oh gosh, it was like 13 or 14. I showed him how to get into some mutual funds and invest some money, and just put it in there and leave it there. We had some good accounts and just leave it there. When he got married 6 years ago, they were able, just fresh out of college now, okay, so he hasn't even worked yet, I mean part-time. He was able to take a whole month off, and him and his wife went to Italy, because we're full-blooded Italians, went to Italy on their honeymoon. So they were able to afford the vacation, afford going to Italy, spent the whole month there, came back, bought a house, had the down payment to buy the house, all because he started when he was 13, and at 22 or 3, he had the money he needed to do all that, or to buy a car or whatever. And now he has 2 new cars.
So you're saying if somebody has kids at age 13, they can take their children with them and come to see in the office.
Exactly. Let me encourage those children to just start investing now, and hopefully their parents have been investing, but if they haven't, we'll start with them too. And just explain to them that, you know, there's things that I didn't do, son or daughter, that I want you to do. I'm far from perfect. There's only one man that's perfect 2,000 years ago. We're far from that. And so I want you to do what I didn't do. And that is, instead of waiting till you're 40 to start, let's start at 15 or 20 or whatever it might be.
I never even thought that you can start investing in that age.
It takes with us, it takes a certain amount of money. So what you would do is actually put that money in a savings account for 6 months, a year or 2, until you have enough accumulated, and then we can roll that over and start investing for you. So you have to have a certain amount to start with.
So it's doable. It's
doable
yes, for
right,
anybody.
Exactly.
That's great. So I want to go with the next question. You wrote down this for me: 10, 10, 10, 70. What's that mean?
Our 10, 10, 10, 70 rule is kind of our favorite one. About 8 or 9 years ago now, I think it's been, I had the privilege of teaching out at Multnomah Bible College. And I taught there for 2 years, every Tuesday morning, a financial planning class. And then they decided that they wanted just ministry classes, not outside classes. I think that they need those classes for financial planning, especially someone going in the ministry or becoming a pastor with very limited funds. They probably need more financial planning. But we had the privilege of teaching there, and we came up with this little 10, 10, 10, 70 rule, because, you know, college students always like to have some kind of a format, some kind of a plan. So we came up with this, and what that reflects is that 10% should go to the Lord. If you don't know the Lord, then it should go to some charity. I think you really need to give, because the more you give, the more you receive. There's no doubt about it. You can't outgive God. If you give 10% to either the Lord or the community project, Salvation Army, I'm on the board at YMCA, you can donate to them. Give away 10%. Then the next 10% is long-term investments. That's where I would come into play. The next 10% is in a savings account, and then live on 70. The interesting thing about that, Lana, is that it works. Whether you're making, as we mentioned, $1,000 a month or $1,000 a day, and I have clients in all categories, if you do that, 10, 10, 10, and live on 70, it just works. most budgets don't work because they become so complicated and so engrossed that you're putting $2 here and $3 there, and that's fine for someone that has the time, but that becomes very cumbersome, and it's really hard, and most people end up after 6 months or whatever.
You become exhausted.
Yeah, they
to
just
keep watching
or it doesn't seem worthwhile, and they stop the budget. This plan is oversimplified. It's simple, but it works. 10, 10, 10, 70. Now, everybody that walks in my office isn't going to go home and start putting away 10, 10, 10, 70, but the object is to try to start. First 10% should definitely go to a charity or the Lord, and then maybe 2, 2, 2 or something, or 10, 5, 5, or whatever the case might be, and then work up to it. I've had students come back 6, 7 years later from Multnomah and say, we're getting close. We're at 10, 8, 8, 8, you know, or 10, 8, 8. We're getting close. We're there. And that's the whole point. And if we learn to do that, and if that's a priority, you were mentioning a little while ago, Lana, that saving money has become a priority to you. And that's why you said found some way to save $400 a month instead of $200 a month. When saving is a priority, we can do it. I have clients that are literally making $150,000 a year and saving nothing. And I have clients making $50,000 a year and they're saving money. It's a priority. We all have to give up something. Give up going out to dinner so often, or maybe buy one pair of shoes instead of two, or maybe have a little bit older car instead of a newer car. We all have to give up something. I've heard some of the wealthiest people in the country talk about they have to give up something. I mean, it may sound facetious to us. I mean, they're buying an $8 million jet instead of a $10 million. But the point is, nobody can have, Solomon probably had everything, but very few of us, people in this country or in this world, can have everything. So if you want to give up something and have saving as a priority, it works.
I want to remind again to our listeners and whoever is watching us that right now you are watching a program, and we have a guest who came all the way from Tualatin, Bob Tamioni, who represents Mortgage Freedom and Financial Services. You can call Bob by dialing 503-692-9643, 503-692-9643, and you can talk to Bob about your financial planning. Bob, why do I need to plan my finances? Many people might think finances is something that I don't have to plan, because planning maybe it's not something that I believe in. But what do you say personally?
Well, I think planning our finances is far more important than planning our vacations, and yet we find that people will spend more time every year planning their vacation, or 1 or 2 weeks, 3 weeks, then they'll spend more time planning their vacation every year than they ever spend totally planning their financial future. And that's why most people are financially broke. Statistically, 95% of the people will be either dead or dead broke at 65. Only 5% will be able to live on their own. Now, that doesn't mean live high above high on the hog. I mean just be able to live on their own. Maybe 1 or 2% of those can actually live a little more comfortable life. But that's why you'll see people in their 70s working at McDonald's or driving I have one person just called, they've been driving a bus for 33 years. People who retire then have to go to work someplace else to make up the difference, because Social Security isn't working, and it's going to get worse and worse, and most pension plans and most 401ks don't work. And the reason they don't work, Lana, is because they aren't there long enough to put the money in the 401k, or the company maybe goes broke. See, what a lot of people don't realize is that the company can borrow from a 401k just like the individual can. Well, what happens if the company borrows from their 401k and then the company goes bankrupt? There's no money left. Like Enron was one of the most famous examples here in town. Enron did that, and people that had $400,000 or something, or $200,000 in their retirement plan, all of a sudden had $50,000 because it went under. And so what we do is we help people roll over those 401ks or their IRAs or even a savings account. I had a client come in the other day, they sold a business and they've got $120,000 sitting in a savings account right now because they're not sure what to do with it. We can help them invest that money and get 4, 5, and 6% pretty consistently, because we have programs, Lana, that will reflect whatever the market is doing. So you're kind of using the market as a guideline, but you're not taking the risk. The company is taking the risk. And these particular products I'm recommending are backed up by the life insurance company, the life insurance industry, which is by far the strongest and most wealthy industry in the world. They are backing it up and saying they guarantee that your investment, when it ever goes up, it will never go down. Now, there may be some years it doesn't go up because the market goes down. But if the market goes down, your investment doesn't go down. Now, as the market comes back, your investment goes up. So, for example...
That was the point.
Yeah.
I'm sorry to stop you for a second. That was the point when I was listening to your program, when you were on different radio, and I said to myself, that was the most powerful statement you said. Because when we invest, we want to make sure if our money does not grow, at least we're not losing what we put in. Either it's 1,000 or 10 or more. It's important, especially for somebody who has very little.
Right.
They're going to lose even that.
Totally.
So that's very important. Got my attention.
A good example, and as I mentioned it, your investment grows as the market comes back, not after it comes back. So, for example, let's say I have $100. We'll just use it simple. I have $100 in the regular market, and you have $100 in this program I'm recommending. And let's say the market goes up to 120. So now we both have 120. But then the market goes back down to 100. Well, you still have 120. I have 100. Now, when the market goes back up 20%, I'm back up to 120. So I'm starting over. I'm just back to even. But your 120 has now grown to 132. Because when mine went up, 142, I'm sorry. When mine went up 20%, so did yours. But so you don't have to gain back what you lost. And I have people I know that have lost 20 and 30% in their 401ks. I have one lady just called. She was coming in on Friday. No, she's Monday. That one's Friday. She said she had 120,000 in her 401k. She's been driving a bus for 33 years. She now has 90,000. Well, that hurts. That's a 30% loss. I mean, that, or 30 something. That really hurts. Imagine anybody out there right now if you lost 30% of your investment. If you lose 30% of your investment, now watch this. When you lose 30% of your investment, you have to make over 45% to get back to even. Mm-hmm. For example, if you lost 50% on your investment, which rarely happens, but if you did, you now have to make 100% on that investment just to get back to even. You lose 20% on your investment, you have to make back almost 30 just to get back to even. And that's our whole point, is that people say, well, I made 20%, I lost 20%. Well, then you're behind. Because if you make 20% and lose 20%,
because of the time frame.
Oh, because of the percentage. Yeah. If I have $100 and I lose 20%, I'm down to 80. Now, how much do I have to earn on my 80 to get back to 100? I have to earn 1/4. So I have to earn 25% to gain the 20% I lost.
Well, it's just something is in those numbers. Some of us get what the numbers are, or some of us not.
Right, exactly. And
that's why we should always seek professionals who can give us a professional advice.
And I show them on a chart, or I write it out saying, when your 100 goes down to 80, you're at 80,000 now. How much do you have to earn on this 80,000 to get back to 100? To earn that 20%, 20% is 1/4 of the 80. 1/4. So you have to make 25% on the 80 to get back the 20% you lost.
You see, you understand that because you're a financial advisor. For someone who is not in the field, they simply have to trust you on that.
Yeah.
And that's the question.
Put a pencil to it. I'm sorry. Show them it mathematically. And once I write it down for them, it makes it pretty clear.
They can see it.
Yeah.
So that's why they need to see you in person. And what I like about it, if they're serious about to understand how they can roll over a pension, some kind of 401k plan or some other saving maybe account, so the money not just lay there, but they are in business. The money is actually grow there because they're working for them. That's amazing. Because
we work for our money. Let us have our money work for us. I'm very, very reticent about helping someone invest money that hasn't come in to see me. It's kind of like calling a doctor and saying, I got a pain, how do you fix it? He can't do it until he checks you out. This I like to do too. I like to check out your financial picture, where you're at, what you've done, what you can do, where you want to go from here. Now, I have existing clients, and that's fine. They call on the phone, and I'll help them invest or do things on the phone, move the money around. That's fine. And once they've sat down and they know what I'm doing, I know what they're doing, we can do that. But yes, I think it's not something you do on the internet or on the email or whatever. This is something you have to do one-on-one. I wish there was a simpler way for you and for me, but I'd rather spend the hour and a half and make sure it's done right for you than to spend 15 minutes on the phone and do it wrong. It's really important.
I totally agree with you. That's very important, especially when it comes to our money. What I heard also somewhere that when we are retired right now in our generation, used to be people live up to 65, 70 because they were a hard worker and there was a different health care. But today people live longer.
Definitely.
And if we before, like say, live only till 65 or 70, then on our retirement we were like 5 or 10 years.
Exactly.
Now when we retire, we have to live another 30 years. No, I'm not saying that you have to die and free yourself from financial problem. But what I'm saying is for those 30 years you're going to live, you're not going to be working, but what you're going to live on.
Exactly. Perfect example, Lana. My dad, who died just about 3 years ago, he was always saying that. I've got to make enough money and set aside enough money because I'm going to have 5 or 10 years of retirement and I need to set that money aside. But today that's not, you're right, it's not happening. Here's an article I want to point out. It talks about reaching old age. 1 in 4 Americans currently age 65. In other words, if you happen to be 65-year-old right now and you're sitting down having dinner, you and your wife and another couple, one of those 4 is going to live to at least age 90. 1 out of 4. 25.
We have a good health care system.
Yeah.
A lot of vitamins.
So 1 out of 4 is going to live to age 90. That probably means that 1 out of 3 are going to live to 85. 1 out of 2 are going to live to 80. Over at one of the golf courses I play out, there's a man there named Mr. Tigard. I think his grandfather formed the city of Tigard. He plays 18 holes of golf, Lana, and he's 103 years old.
Wow.
You know, a couple dozen years ago, 20 years ago, we had a couple dozen people over age 100. Do you know today there are 110,000 people over age 100?
How that could be?
You know, here's another article. It talks about the golden years. Overall Americans expect to live an average of 21 years in retirement. That was 25. So 21 to 25 is what the average person thinks they're going to live in retirement. You know how much money you have to have set aside to live off of that 25 years? You either have to have a lot of money or have a program like ours, because our program, when you want to finally retire or want to start taking money out, we have a guaranteed income program where that plan will pay you a guaranteed income. Now, the plan itself has been averaging 5.8% per year for the last 10 years. I'll point that out in a moment. But when you go to retire or want to start taking money out, they will pay you up to 7 or 8 or 9%, depending on your age, income from that. So if you have $100,000 invested, you can get 7 or 8 or 9,000 a year income, guaranteed the rest of your life, whether you live 5 years or 35 years. Now that's the point where you know the money's going to be there 20 years down the road. Whereas the market, for example, here, let's take this last 10 years. This last 10 years, I have a prime example here, this lady I like to point out. She invested in May of 2000. In May of 2010, exactly 10 years, she had made 58% on her investment. You'll notice here, she started out with 34,000, ended up with 52, $19,000 gain. That's a 58% gain during those 10 years. You know what the market overall did for those same 10 years? The S&P 500, for those of you who don't know, the S&P 500 is a guideline, an indication of what the market does as a whole. From June of 2000 to June of 2010, about the same time, the market, S&P 500, had a return of minus 1.6%.
Wow.
So that means if you had $100,000 in 2000, in 2010, you've got $98,400. You've lost 1.6. Her 100,000, she didn't have 100,000, but her 100,000, if she had it, would have been worth 158,000. And that's because, again, our program is going to make 3, 4, 5, 6% each year, most years, but it's never going to go down. So that's why 5.8% is a very relative figure. Because what it really boils down to is when you invest in this program, half of your money has a limit of 3% per year that it's going to grow. The other half of your money has a limit of 1.1% per month that it's going to grow. Now, 1% per month, it doesn't mean you're going to get 12%. And that'll probably never happen. But some months you'll get 1%, some months a half. Now, some months where this S&P went up 1.5%, you're only going to get 1%. But it's going to average out. So if you average out the potential 12, you average out the potential 3, that's where you come out to 5.6 or around 6% interest. I had a client call me and say, you know, my 401k went down so bad I finally changed it to a straight cash plan. It's all in cash right now. And he says, I'm getting like a 0.9% on my money, which is not even coffee money. But he says, on your program, I heard you might average 4, 5, or 6%. He says, that's what I want. Because it's guaranteed it will never go down. Now, real quickly, some people will say, now that sounds a little bit too good to be true. And you know, Lana, when I heard about this about 10 years ago, I said the exact same thing. I said, okay, you've explained all the benefits of this program. Now, when are you going to drop the other shoe? It's a little bit too good to be true. Sounds too good to be true. But it is true. And I realized a little bit back then, but now I know exactly why. They told me that if you take your large funds, your mutual funds, investment funds, life insurance company funds, I think I said mutual funds, and bank funds, union funds, anybody that has multi-billions, with a B, multi-billions of dollars, they can invest every day, and they invest 2 or 3 times a day or a dozen times a day. When they invest, they are very, very knowledgeable of the market, and they're doing it every day. There's some guessing involved, but it's very educated guessing, very intelligent guessing, very scientific guessing. When they do that, they know they can make maybe a little 1/16% that day. But if they make a 1/16% that day, what is that at the end of the year? That's 8, 10%. So they know they can always make money on the market. They've always beat the market over 100 years. I'm sure they always will. So they're saying, why don't we just pay you whatever the market does up to these limits? We'll pay you that because we know, the company, we know we're going to make money on that money. It's not me because I'm not handling it. I'm just the go-between. But they know they're going to make money on it. So they say, invest with us. We guarantee it. We're going to take all the risk because we know we're always going to make 2 or 3 or 4% more than you would have made of in the market. So if you and I make 5% in the market, they made 7 or 8. You and I made 2, they made 5 or 6. Because they know they can always beat the market, they always have, and I'm sure they always will, they're saying, why not just give you whatever the market does?
That's really interesting because understanding numbers, it will definitely lights up what you need to do.
I'm throwing out an awful lot of numbers, but I want to
Yeah, but it makes sense because, you know, each of us were looking for some kind of facts,
Exactly.
how it actually works. And for us in our culture, it's not necessarily something we don't know what it is, but it is really foreign to understand how it works actually, because we didn't grow up with the system like my generation or somebody older with investing money and dealing with the businesses. And there is a lot of business owners, there is a lot of businessmen that watching us right now and listening us right now, and they would like to know how they can do it and where they can seek the help. I know people who just trust the bank and they just putting money on a saving. What would you say what's happening right now in the bank industry, like when you just having checking and have a saving? So what happens there?
One of my favorite sayings, Lana, is don't do what the bank says, do what the bank does. And that is, the bank is investing in these type of programs. The bank is making their 7 or 8, 10% return. And they're paying, like I said, I heard one savings was a 0.9. There's less than 1% return on the savings. Now there's some reasons for that. I'm not saying the bank is crooked or bad. I'm just saying there's some reasons for that. First off, the bank, when you put money with them, they have to have it readily accessible because you might come back tomorrow and want it out. This type of program I'm investing in, suggesting, it's a long-term investment, 3, 4, 5 years or longer. This is not something where you put your money in and then 6 months from now take it back out. It's not that kind of plan. The bank knows that you might come back tomorrow and want that money, so they're going to have to pay you a very low interest because they can't go into a long-term investment either because you might want the money. This plan, because it's a long-term investment, the company knows, the insurance company that's backing it knows that they're probably going to have that money for 4, 5, or 6 years. You can take it out, but there's some penalties.
Very good point. So the reason is the bank cannot offer, if you put in money in the saving, is because it's a short-term investment, because they cannot trust you that you said it's going to be there for several years, but actually something happens, now, you came after in 6 months.
If you get a CD, a certificate of deposit, like maybe a 5-year, then that plan says if you keep it for 5 years, you make a little more money than you would have on the short term. But there are large penalties if you don't leave it in there 5 years. You may lose some of your money, let alone lose all the interest. You might even lose some of your investment, because they have to do that to make sure that money's there 5 years so they can go out now and invest in a 5-year program. Because the longer term programs are going to yield in the long run more money. Maybe not the first year or two, maybe not the last year or two, but over the long term, they're going to yield more. That's why I've got some more examples here of people making 5, 6, and 7% per year for the last 10 years. Okay, for years and years. The last 10 years, I have 5.8. That's a real good one. But that's because in this particular service I'm offering, the annuity plan with the life insurance company, Lana, it guarantees the money will never go down. The value will never go down. There are no fees. There are no charges, no sales costs, no fees. All your money, you put in $100, it's all working for you. But there are surrender charges. In other words, you can't take it all out in the first few years without paying a penalty. But as long as you leave it in there for a few years, then the penalty goes away, and then it's a pure investment. There are no costs, no fees. Okay? And by the way, you can take out 10% every year with no fees. So if you did put in $100,000, you could take out $10,000 every year and not have any fees. But if you took out more than that, there's going to be some surrender charges. But because they're there, the company knows they kind of have you on the hook, you know, for 4 or 5 years. Therefore, they can go into long-term investments and make more money too. And
they're making money for you, and
exactly.
they making money for themselves.
Have to be. And the other problem the banks have, quite frankly, is the banks have a lot of branches. A lot of people, a lot of buildings. I was down at Lloyd Center one day and looked at the banks across the street, and I sat there for a few minutes in the lobby, and there are 4 banks in that lobby. And during it must have been close to an hour, Lena, during that hour, there was probably 5 or 6 people went in those 4 banks. But in those banks, there are 3 and 4 or 5 tellers in each bank because they have to be there when the crowd comes in. But during those times when there's nobody coming in, that's what we call downtime. There's still costs, there's still overhead, the lights are still on, the electricity is still on, they're still paying the employees. But with the life insurance company, by the way, this is not life insurance, this is just a life insurance company backing it up. You don't have to qualify for it, it's automatically, it's always there. You don't have any fees, no costs. But with them, you're sending the money to their home office. So they have one office, one's in Lansing, Michigan that I represent, the other one I represent is in Sioux Falls, South Dakota. They have that one big branch, all the money's coming in and they're investing it. So they don't have downtime. All their employees are working full time on the program. They may have 400 or 500 employees, they do, but they're working full.
The way how to cut those expenses.
Exactly. So instead of having 10 branches with 4 employees each, they have 40 employees in one office and they're working full time.
That's amazing. I want to remind again to our listeners and whoever is watching us that you are listening to the program that we're speaking about finances. We have a guest, Bob Tamioni, Mortgage Freedom and Financial Services, 503-692-9642, 503-692-9643, who came down, 43. Who came down from Tualatin, and we're speaking today about money. We're speaking how we can invest, how we can roll over our pension, our 401k plan. And if you come and see Bob and bring your children with you, if they're a teenager,
sure.
will be a great investment time. Because what you said earlier, that we can bring our children who is in age 14, and we can have a consultation with you, for which you don't charge. But we have to be serious about, if we came to see you, we don't want to waste your time either, just to receive information. Just in receiving information, not going to help them out anyway.
And I strongly recommend, if there are small children, if it's possible to get a sitter, because what we're talking about is so critically important for your future. We don't want to have a lot of disturbance or a lot of interruptions. But yes, if the child is 15, 16, you want them to start investing, bring them with you. But for your sake, it doesn't matter to me, but for your sake, the smaller children, which we have to take care of, it's going to be harder for you to concentrate and pay attention to what's. And we're only going to be for an hour and a half, but it's really important that the information be gathered at that time and that you really understand what's going on. We don't want any interruptions. That's why we have a very quiet office, just the 2 of us in there, and it'll be very quiet.
That's wonderful. And on top of that, they can bring anybody who can interpreter, because there is going to be papers involved. And I really like that idea that you creating this individual papers, so that we can understand what kind of plan this works for us. So you're customizing.
We do a customized computer printout exactly with what you want to do, how much you want to invest, when do you want that to be a certain amount of money, at what age, and how much do you have to invest to get to that point. We can figure all that out for you. Here's another one I thought was exciting too, because a lot of people are talking about the market has been so really bad lately. They're talking about the market crashing. Well, the market adjusts about every 5 or 6 years like clockwork, Lana. Since 1950, the market has had these so-called end-of-the-world crashes 13 times, okay? and each time they come back. So about every 5, 6, 7 years, this is going to happen. So if you say, well, the market was real bad in 08 and 09, and it's not too bad right now, so maybe I'll keep my money where it's at. Well, that's true. You might be making a little bit of money now, but 5 or 6 years from now, it's going to happen again. And my concern is, if you happen to be taking money out at the time it's also going down, look what happens. You have a double whammy there. You have a double dip. You're taking some money out and it's going down. It's not going to last very long. So we want a plan that guaranteed will never go down. So 5, 6 years from now, or 10 years from now, whenever I want to start taking money out or retire, I want to make sure it's there and it's going to stay there and it's going to be guaranteed for the rest of my life. For example, this lady, one of the top financial people in the country, she just died recently, unfortunately, of cancer. Great lady, Dr. Tucker Hart Adams. She wrote this article, and she said, I can't see very well in here, but she says, although we have had moderate growth in the last 3 quarters, the U.S. economy is still flat on its back. And then the last sentence is, the failure of economic growth to meet expectations, listen to this, underscores the nagging fact that people think that growth is not going to happen. There's going to be no more growth in this society. Okay?
People think that way.
Yes, and they're thinking that way. And the market has been real bad the last few years. It's been pretty good the last couple of months. And people are concerned that there's not going to be any future. Okay? And yet look when the article was written, 1991. So 20 years ago, the same thing was happening as happening today. And 20 years from now, it'll probably be happening again. So my point is, we're going to get people into a plan that's guaranteed. So if these people had invested in 1991 with us, like this lady did, we would have our 100,000 would be worth 150 or 175,000, not 80 or 90,000. Okay, and
so
that's
history
the whole.
Repeats itself.
Oh, exactly, totally. There's nothing new under the sun. It may look new, it may be shiny, but it's underneath. It's the same thing as it was 20 years ago.
That's wonderful. Our time is unfortunately already done, but
really?
We are really appreciate Bob for you to come over and give us a little. A class, so to speak, education, because it's important to understand what's going on in the market, how we can do it, and where we can seek help. I want to remind again to our listeners, and I'm going to transfer our English to Russian, so that way we can round it up.
And also, I wanted to mention real quickly, if I may, our webpage is mortgagefreedomco.com. So mortgage, M-O-R-T-G-A-G-E, freedomco.com. They can go on there and look us up too.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Bob. Дорогие телезрители, наше время подошло к концу. Вы слушали программу «Права и обязанности», и у нас сегодня в гостях был Боб Тамиони, который представляет компанию Mortgage Freedom and Financial Services. Вы можете связаться с Бобом по телефону 503-692-9643. 503-692-9643. Он располагается в городе Туалатин, штата Орегона. И вы слушали всю программу и знаете все детали именно таких моментов, как вы можете прийти с переводчиком, вы можете взять своих детей, которые подросткового возраста, чтобы они также могли услышать о том, как они могут инвестировать деньги. Поэтому, если у вас возникнут вопросы, вы можете позвонить Боб Тамиони 503-692-9643. А мы с вами прощаемся, дорогие телезрители, а также радиослушатели. И помните о ваших правах, но не забывайте о ваших обязанностях. Всего доброго.